You know, when you get old, you start thinking you've seen it all. I thought I had. Lord knows, after 70 years on this earth, I believed no shock could twist my heart the way life already had. But that day, standing under the highway bridge with the smell of rain and gasoline in the air, I realized I was wrong. So damn wrong. It was a chilly morning, gray skies hanging low over our small town in Oregon. I was sitting by the window, sipping on my usual cup of weak coffee, the kind that doesn't really wake you up, just keeps your hands warm. My old radio was humming some country tune, the kind that makes your soul ache in a familiar way. I remember glancing at the family photo on the wall. Me, my boy Daniel, and his little girl Emmy. That picture was from before everything went sideways, before Daniel vanished 3 years ago with his wife Claire. Claire, that woman, my daughter-in-law. She was a pretty thing, with a sharp tongue and eyes that could slice glass. When she told me they were leaving for Australia after that big fight, I didn't argue. I just nodded and prayed for them. She said they were starting fresh. A new life, Mom, Daniel told me over the phone. But his voice sounded tired, like he was trying to convince himself more than me. And then, silence. 3 years of nothing. No calls, no letters. Not even a Christmas card. Until that day. My friend Lila stopped by with a bag of groceries. "Helen," she said. "That's me. You won't believe who I saw behind the old mill bridge." I laughed, thinking she was just gossiping again. "If it's another raccoon story, Lila, I ain't listening." But her face turned pale. "No, Helen. It was a man and a little girl. Looked a lot like your Daniel and Emmy." My heart skipped so hard it hurt. I tried to brush it off, told her she must be mistaken. But deep inside, something twisted in me. That kind of twist that only a mother's gut can understand. I grabbed my old coat and car keys. My hands were shaking. I didn't even lock the door. Just jumped in my rusted Chevy and drove toward that bridge. Rain started falling, thin and cold, tapping on the windshield like impatient fingers. The closer I got, the more my heart pounded. The bridge was quiet when I parked nearby, the kind of quiet that screams louder than noise. I stepped out, boots sinking into the mud. And then I saw them. 2 figures huddled under the concrete arch. A man and a little girl. She was wrapped in a pink blanket that looked too small for her. The man, Lord, he looked like a ghost of my son. "Daniel?" I whispered, barely breathing. He turned his head. His beard was overgrown, eyes hollow, but those eyes, I'd know 'em anywhere. "Mom?" he croaked, standing up too fast, nearly losing his balance. Emmy woke up, clutching her doll, looking scared. I froze. For a moment, time didn't move. The cars above us roared by, but it all felt a million miles away. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice cracking. "What happened to you? Where's Claire?" He just looked at me, like the weight of 1,000 nights was sitting on his shoulders. "She's gone, Mom. Claire's gone." Emmy tugged on my sleeve, whispering, "Grandma, are we going home now?" That broke me. I fell to my knees, pulling her close, smelling the dirt and cold in her hair. My baby granddaughter, living under— "Hate you!" I said, tears running down my face. "Boy, you could have robbed a bank and I'd still feed you dinner." He laughed a little, just a weak sound, like his soul had forgotten how to. I told them to get in the car. I didn't care what had happened, Who was to blame, or what story Claire had spun? My son and granddaughter were coming home. As I drove us back, the heater barely working, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror. Emmy had fallen asleep again, clutching that old doll tight. Daniel just stared out the window, lost somewhere far away. I didn't ask questions then. I just drove through the rain, whispering prayers under my breath. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Because behind that silence, behind those tired eyes, my son was hiding something. And whatever it was big enough to haunt him for years. When we got home that night, the rain was still coming down in thin gray sheets, making the road look like melted silver. My old Chevy rattled into the driveway like it always did, coughing its last breath before going quiet. The porch light flickered, like it knew something was off. I helped Emmy out first. Her little shoes were soaked, her cheeks red from the cold. She looked around like she barely remembered the place. The yard, the porch swing Daniel built with his daddy back when times were better. It broke my heart. "Come on, sweet pea," I whispered, wrapping my shawl tighter around her shoulders. "Let's get you warm." Daniel didn't move right away. He just stood there in the rain, looking at the house like it was a ghost from another life. "Go on in, son," I said softly. "You're home now." He nodded, slow, like each step toward that door cost him something. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and old books, the same way it always did. The heater made that low hum, and the cat, Rusty, jumped off the couch when he saw strangers coming in. I sat Emmy by the fireplace, pulled off her wet shoes, and wrapped her feet in a towel. "You hungry, honey?" She nodded, shyly. "A little." "Good. Grandma still got her secret stash of peanut butter sandwiches." She smiled. That little half grin that looked just like Daniel's when he was her age. I went into the kitchen, grabbing bread and jam, and that's when I heard him behind me. "Mom," he said quietly. I turned. He looked broken. Not just tired, but the kind of tired that seeps into your bones. "What happened to you, Danny?" I asked. "You look like you've been fighting ghosts." He leaned against the counter, running a hand through his hair. "It's a long story, Mom." "Well," I said, spreading peanut butter like it was medicine. "Lucky for you, I got time." He gave a weak smile, but didn't start talking. Not yet. We ate in silence for a bit, the kind where you hear every tick of the clock. Emmy giggled once when Rusty brushed against her leg, and for a split second, it felt like home again. But then I looked at Daniel, and that feeling slipped away. After dinner, I set up the old guest room. Fresh sheets, warm blankets, the same ones I'd folded years ago when I thought they might visit. Never thought it'd be under these circumstances. As I tucked Emmy in, she looked up and whispered, "Grandma, do you think Mommy will come soon?" That question sliced through me like glass. I brushed her hair back gently. "We'll talk about that later, sugar. You just get some rest." She nodded and closed her eyes, her tiny hands still holding that raggedy doll. When I stepped out, Daniel was sitting at the kitchen table again, staring at nothing. The rain had stopped, but the sound of it lingered in the gutters like a memory. "You can tell me now," I said, sitting across from him. "What happened in Australia?" He let out a long, shaky breath. "She left us, Mom. Claire just walked away." I frowned. "Walked away? From what, Danny?" "From everything," he said. "From me, From Emmy, from the life we built. One day she said she was going to see a friend, and she never came back. Took the money, the car, even Emmy's passport. I couldn't reach her. I tried. God knows I tried. His hands trembled as he spoke. I saw anger in him, but also shame. "Why didn't you call me?" I asked, fighting the lump in my throat. "I would have helped." "I didn't want you to know how bad it got," he said. "At first I thought I could fix it, find work, get back on my feet, but every job turned me away. And when my visa expired, I had to leave. We came back here with nothing." He looked down, whispering, "I didn't even have enough for a motel, Mom." Lord, I felt my chest tighten. I reached across the table, holding his hand. "You did the right thing coming home, son. That's what family's for." He squeezed my hand, eyes glistening. "I didn't know if you'd want me back." I laughed softly through my tears. "Danny, I may scold, I may fuss, but I don't quit on my blood. Never have, never will." We sat there, the two of us, in that quiet kitchen, lit by the dim yellow bulb. It wasn't much, but for the first time in years, we were under the same roof. Still, deep inside, I knew the storm wasn't over. Ending. Something in his voice, the way he couldn't meet my eyes when I said Claire's name, there was more. And before long, that truth was going to crawl out of the dark, whether he liked it or not. The next morning came with that quiet gray light that makes everything feel half asleep. I woke before dawn, like I always do, and stood by the kitchen window, watching the fog roll through the yard. The grass shimmered with dew, and somewhere down the road, I heard a rooster trying his best to sound proud. The house was still. No clatter of dishes, no TV hum, just that deep country silence I'd grown used to. Except now it wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. I could feel the tension sitting in the air, like dust that wouldn't settle. I brewed some coffee and stared at the empty chair across from me. That was where Daniel's daddy used to sit before he passed. Every morning, same spot, same newspaper folded neat as a sermon. Sometimes I swear I still hear the sound of him flipping the pages. When I turned, Daniel was already standing in the doorway. His hair was a mess, eyes tired like he hadn't slept much. "Morning, son," I said softly. "Morning, Mom." He sat down, staring at the steam rising off his cup. Emmy's laughter came faint from the other room. She was talking to Rusty, the cat, like they'd been best friends for years. That sound, sweet and light, almost made me forget how broken we all were. Almost. I handed Daniel a plate of scrambled eggs, but he barely touched it. "You still ain't hungry?" I asked. He shook his head. "Can't eat much lately. Not since everything." I waited. I knew better than to push a man before he's ready, but my heart couldn't help it. "Daniel," I said quietly, "what happened the day Claire left? You told me she took the money. But what really went down?" He rubbed his temples. "You sure you want to know, Mom?" "Son," I sighed, "I done raised you from diapers to debt collectors. There ain't much left that can scare me." He smiled just a little, that same half grin from when he was a boy. Then it vanished. "It started after the bakery took off," he said. "Claire's baking videos went viral online. She loved the fame, the comments, the attention. I was proud of her at first. But soon it stopped being about the bakery. She started spending more time on social media than with me and Emmy. Folks from overseas began contacting her, sponsors, investors. She said we could make it big if we moved." "So you followed her?" I said. "Yeah, I thought it was the right thing to do." He paused, fingers digging into his coffee cup. But Australia wasn't what she promised. The deal fell apart. She blamed me, said I held her back, said Emmy was a burden. Then one night, I came home and they were gone. The apartment empty, my name wiped from the lease. No note, no call, just gone. His voice cracked on that last word. Lord, I felt my throat burning. I wanted to reach out, hold his face, tell him he'd done his best, but he wasn't done. I found her months later. He whispered. Online. She was living with another man, some fancy real estate guy. She posted pictures of beaches, parties, champagne, and every caption said something like, "Finally free from my old life." I felt the air leave my lungs. She said she was free? He nodded. Free from us. For a moment, the only sound was the tick of the wall clock. Emmy ran in, holding a picture she'd drawn. Grandma, look, it's you, me, and Daddy. I smiled and took it from her. The stick figures were crooked, the sun way too big, but Lord, it was beautiful. It's perfect, sugar, I said. Daniel turned away, his shoulders shaking. He didn't want her to see him crying. I pretended not to notice. After breakfast, he said he wanted to take a walk to clear his head. I told him to wear his jacket. Oregon air's no joke when it's damp, and watched from the porch as he disappeared down the road. Emmy played in the yard, humming to herself. I sat on the porch swing, letting the creak of the chains fill the silence. But even as the sun broke through the clouds, something in my gut felt off. That old mother's instinct, it never lies. And sure enough, not even 2 hours later, the phone rang. When I picked it up, a familiar voice on the other end made my heart stop cold. "Hello, Helen," the woman said. Smooth, polished, and sharp as a blade. It was Claire. For a second, I couldn't breathe. That voice, I hadn't heard it in years, but I'd know it anywhere. Sweet and poisonous all at once, like honey dripping off a razor. "Claire?" I whispered, my hand trembling on the receiver. She chuckled, real soft, like I was some old fool she'd outsmarted. "Well, you sound surprised, Helen. Didn't think I'd ever call, huh?" I stepped out onto the porch, glancing toward the road where Daniel had gone. The sun was low now, painting the fields gold and quiet. "You've got a lot of nerve calling here after what you did," I said, keeping my voice steady, though my chest was pounding. "Don't start, Helen," she sighed. "I didn't call to fight." "Then why did you call?" I snapped. "You left my boy living under a damn bridge. You left your daughter cold and hungry. You. I called because Daniel's been messaging me." She cut in, sharp and fast. My heart stuttered. "That's a lie." "Oh, it's not," she said smoothly. "He emailed me last week, said you found him, said you took him in." I froze. Daniel hadn't mentioned anything like that. "And?" I asked, trying to keep my breath even. "He said he wants to talk. Said he's ready to make things right." I could almost see that smug smile through the phone. "Well, isn't that something?" I said slowly. "And what exactly do you want, Claire?" She laughed, that soft, fake laugh of hers that always made my skin crawl. "I just want to help, Helen. I have a life here now, a good life. Maybe I can send some money, get him and Emmy back on their feet. It's what's best for everyone." I bit back the anger bubbling in my throat. "You think you can just buy your way out of this mess? Out of what you did to them?" "Don't make it sound so dramatic," she said coldly. "Things didn't work out. People change." "People don't abandon their families, Claire. There was a long pause, long enough for the wind to hiss through the trees and the porch boards to creak beneath me. Then she said it, calm as a church whisper. "Tell Daniel I'll be back in the States soon. And when I do, I want to see my daughter." That's when my stomach dropped. "You ain't taking Emmy," I said, my voice low. "She's my child, Helen. You can't keep her from me." Before I could say another word, the line went dead. I stood there, staring at the phone in my hand like it had turned to ice. Claire, that woman had vanished for 3 years, and now she was coming back like nothing happened. The door creaked behind me. I turned and saw Daniel standing there, face pale, eyes wide. "Was that her?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "She said you emailed her." He looked down at the ground, guilt written all over his face. "Yeah," he murmured. "I did." The words hit me like a brick. "Why, Daniel? After all she's done?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "Because I need..." That night, he barely spoke at dinner. Emmy kept asking where her mommy was. Innocent little voice, twisting my heart in knots. When I tucked her into bed, she held my hand and said, "Grandma, Daddy cries when he thinks I'm asleep." I brushed her hair back and whispered, "He's just missing the good days, sweetheart. Go on and dream good dreams." But later, when the house was dark, I found Daniel sitting on the back steps, staring out into the night. He looked up when he heard me, his eyes red and hollow. "She said she wants to see Emmy," he said flatly. "I know. I don't trust her," he said. "But part of me still loves her. Ain't that sick?" I put my hand on his shoulder. "It ain't sick, son. It's human. But don't you forget, love's only worth something when it don't destroy you." He nodded, silent. Then, almost to himself, he whispered, "If she really comes back, I'm gonna find out what she's hiding. I swear I will." And deep down, I knew, whatever truth Claire was bringing with her, it wasn't gonna be peace. It was gonna be pain. It was a few weeks later when I saw her again, Claire Rogers, standing at the end of Main Street, right across from my bakery. The same woman who'd once walked out of my son's life like he was nothing more than a stain she couldn't scrub out. Only this time, she wasn't wearing that proud, high and mighty look she used to wear. Her hair was a little dull, her clothes wrinkled, but her eyes were still cold. I froze mid-step, my apron covered in flour, still holding a tray of cinnamon rolls. My heart felt like it skipped a beat. Behind me, Daniel was cleaning up the counter, humming one of those old country tunes we used to sing in the car. He didn't see her yet. Thank God he didn't. Claire crossed the street slowly, like she was measuring every step, like she was walking toward a grave she didn't want to visit. When she got close, she smiled, but that smile didn't reach her eyes. "Hey, Helen," she said softly, voice trembling just enough to sound pitiful. I swallowed hard. Claire. I didn't call her sweetheart like I used to. That word died 3 years ago. She looked around at the bakery, the new paint, the grandma's sweets, sign shining in the morning light. "You've done well, better than I thought." "Life goes on," I said, brushing flour off my hands. "Some of us had no choice." Her face twitched. "I came back for Emmy," she whispered. I almost dropped the tray. "You what?" "My daughter. I came to get her. I want her to live with me now. I'm her mother." That word, mother, cut through me like a blade. I remembered the nights Emmy cried herself to sleep, clutching her daddy's old flannel shirt, asking where her mommy was. I remembered Daniel sitting in the dark, staring at that empty chair by the window. You left her, I said quietly. You left them both. Claire's chin lifted. Things were complicated. You wouldn't understand. I understand more than you think, I snapped, voice shaking. I understand what it looks like when someone walks away from love and calls it complicated. She looked past me then, through the bakery window, where Daniel was standing now, frozen, eyes wide as he saw her reflection. For a moment, the world just stopped. The sound of cars faded. The smell of cinnamon turned bitter, and I swear I could hear my own heartbeat echo in my ears. Daniel stepped out slowly, wiping his hands on his apron. Claire. She turned, tears welling in her eyes. Danny, I miss you. He laughed, not the warm kind of laugh, but the bitter one that hides 1,000 sleepless nights. Missed me? You left me to raise our daughter under a bridge, Claire. Her face fell, and for a split second, I saw guilt flicker across it. I didn't know you were struggling, she said weakly. You didn't ask, he replied. I looked between them, my stomach tight. Something in the air told me this wasn't the end of it. Not by a long shot, because the way Claire's eyes darted around, the way her fingers clenched that purse of hers, I knew she hadn't come back for love. She'd come back for something else. And deep down, I feared that whatever that something was, it was going to break us all over again. That night, I couldn't sleep. The sound of the clock ticking in the living room felt louder than ever, like it was counting down to something bad. I sat by the window with a cup of chamomile tea, staring out into the moonlight. My heart just wouldn't settle. Daniel had barely spoken after Claire showed up. He'd tucked little Emmy into bed, kissed her forehead, and just sat outside on the porch for hours. Quiet, hollow. When I peeked through the curtains, I saw him staring into the darkness, his shoulders slumped, his eyes heavy. That sight alone broke me a little inside. The next morning, I was in the bakery early, kneading dough before sunrise. The scent of fresh bread usually gave me peace, but not that day. When Daniel walked in, he looked like he hadn't slept either. Mom, he said quietly, sitting down on the stool near the counter. She's serious. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? He pulled a crumpled paper from his jacket and placed it on the counter. I wiped my hands and picked it up. The words printed across the top made my knees weak. Custody petition. She's suing for custody of Emmy, he said. His voice cracked halfway through her name. I sank into the chair, unable to speak for a moment. But how? She left you. She left her. Daniel rubbed his face, sighing hard. She's got a lawyer. Says she's stable now. Got a new job overseas. Some nonsense about providing a better life. I slammed the paper down, my hands trembling. A better life? That woman didn't care about better when her daughter was sleeping in the cold under a bridge. He looked up at me, eyes wet. I know, Mom, but she's got money now, lawyers, connections. I don't even know where to start. I reached over and grabbed his hand. You're not fighting this alone. You hear me? She doesn't get to come back and rewrite history just because she's cleaned up her mess. Daniel squeezed my hand back, but his expression stayed haunted. Emmy's all I've got, Mom. I can't lose her. I leaned forward. You won't. Not while I'm breathing. But even as I said it, fear coiled deep in my chest. I knew how the world worked. Money talked, and the truth often whispered in corners where no one wanted to listen. Later that afternoon, Claire came again, dressed neat, expensive sunglasses, her smile forced but confident. She walked into the bakery like she owned it. "Well," she said, glancing around, "looks like business is good. You've done a fine job keeping things afloat." I didn't answer. I just wiped the counter and waited for her to get to the point. "I'm giving Daniel a chance to do this the easy way," she said finally. "If he signs over custody voluntarily, I'll let him visit. I don't want to make things ugly." "Ugly?" I repeated, stepping closer. "You already made it ugly the moment you left your baby behind. Now you come waltzing back here with your fancy clothes, thinking you can fix everything with a lawyer and a fake smile?" Her jaw tightened, but she kept that calm, fake tone. "I've changed, Helen. I'm capable now. Emmy deserves more than a bakery and small-town life." I took a deep breath, trying not to explode. "You don't know what that little girl needs anymore. You forfeited that right the day you walked away." She smirked, that same old smirk I remembered too well. "You'll see, Helen. The court will agree with me." Then she left, her perfume lingering like poison in the air. Daniel walked in a minute later, just as the door shut behind her. "She came here again, didn't she?" I nodded slowly. He looked defeated, but then something changed in his eyes. A spark, small but fierce. "I'm not gonna let her take Emmy. I'll fight her, Mom, even if it breaks me. ... Dot, dot, dot. Dot, dot, dot." I put my hand on his cheek. "You fight, baby, but we'll do it smart. She's not winning this time." And as I said it, I realized this wasn't just about a custody battle. This was about truth, about a mother's love, a grandmother's strength, and a woman who thought she could twist both for her own gain. I didn't know then that the fight ahead would tear open old wounds, drag out secrets, and test us all in ways we weren't ready for. But I could feel it. Something was coming. I felt my chest tighten so hard, I had to sit down. "She's coming after the bakery too?" Daniel nodded, staring blankly at the letter. "She claims she helped start it before leaving. Says it's part of marital property." I couldn't believe it. That woman hadn't baked a single roll in years. I remember her first and only day helping. She'd ruined a batch of sugar cookies and left early to meet her friends for cocktails. "She's not taking what we built," I said, my voice low but firm. "Not the bakery, not Emmy, not a damn thing." Daniel exhaled sharply and rubbed his temples. "Mom, lawyers cost money. We barely got by these past few years. I'll sell the van if I have to," I said without thinking. "Or the old coffee machine. We'll make it work." He looked at me, guilt written all over his face. "You shouldn't have to fix this." I smiled faintly. "That's what moms do, sweetheart. We fix things even when they're already broken." That afternoon, we went to see a local attorney, Mr. Robert Hayes, a retired lawyer who'd moved back to town to live a quieter life. His office was small but neat, full of books and family pictures. After reading the summons, he leaned back in his chair. "Well, she's got herself a fancy city firm. I can tell by the paperwork style. But it's all bark unless she's got solid proof." Daniel sighed. "She's claiming emotional damage and unpaid spousal assets. Says I kicked her out, which is complete garbage." Mr. Hayes nodded. "Then we'll prove it. But we'll need evidence. Texts, letters, witnesses. Anything showing she left of her own choice. I looked at Daniel. We've got the note she left the day she packed up. Remember? His eyes widened. You kept that? I smiled softly. A mother keeps everything. We went home and dug through an old box I'd kept under the stairs. Baby pictures, report cards, and there it was, a folded letter, yellowed around the edges. Claire's handwriting was unmistakable. Don't wait for me. I'm done. When we showed it to Mr. Hayes the next morning, he whistled low. This could change everything. We'll file it as Exhibit A. Still, I couldn't shake the anxiety that lingered in the back of my mind. Claire wasn't stupid. She was calculated. If she'd come this far, she must have thought she had an advantage somewhere. That evening, while I was closing up the bakery, the phone rang. I picked it up, expecting a customer, but it was her voice. Hello, Helen. I froze. What do you want, Claire? I just thought you should know, she said casually. This isn't personal. It's about what's fair. Fair? I snapped. You left your husband and child to chase some dream in another country, and now you come back demanding what's yours? She chuckled. Soft, cold. You'll understand soon. The truth's not as pretty as you think. Before I could answer, she hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I stared at the ceiling, hearing her words over and over. The truth's not as pretty as you think. What truth? Daniel had told me everything, or so I believed. But her tone, that smugness, something about it made me uneasy. 2 days later, the courthouse papers came through. Trial date set, June 12th. We spent every waking hour preparing. Mr. Hayes brought in his niece, Lucy, a sharp young paralegal from the city, who volunteered to help us. She was quick, smart, and had a way of making things make sense. But still, as the days ticked by, I could feel a storm brewing. The night before the trial, I found Daniel sitting outside on the porch again. Emmy was asleep inside, clutching her teddy bear. She's gonna twist everything, he said quietly. Make me look. June 12th arrived with skies the color of old bruises. The whole town seemed to hold its breath that morning. I dressed in my best Sunday clothes, even though my hands shook as I buttoned the cardigan. Daniel wore his only suit, wrinkled at the elbows, but it made him look strong. And little Emmy stayed with Sister Rosa from the church, because I couldn't bear for her to see what was about to unfold. The courthouse was crowded. Cameras, reporters, curious faces from town, folks who used to buy our cupcakes now whispering as we walked by. I could feel their eyes. Some were sympathetic, others hungry for drama. Claire arrived last. She stepped out of a black sedan like some movie star. Hair perfect, heels clicking across the marble floor. She wore a cream suit and sunglasses even though we were indoors. Her lawyer followed right behind, tall, smug, holding a leather briefcase like it was a trophy. When her eyes met mine, she smiled that same old empty smile. I swear it froze the air around me. Inside, the judge took his seat, a heavy-set man with kind eyes, but a voice that carried power. Court is now in session, he said. Lucy set our documents on the table. She gave Daniel a reassuring nod. I sat behind them, clutching my cross necklace, whispering a prayer under my breath. The other side went first. Claire's lawyer stood and painted his version of the story, like a well-rehearsed play. He said Daniel had been emotionally volatile, financially reckless, verbally aggressive. He even claimed I'd interfered in their marriage. When he spoke the word interfered, Claire dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Fake tears, not a drop reel. Daniel sat stiff, jaw tight. I could see his pulse hammering in his neck. I reached forward and squeezed his shoulder just once. Stay calm, baby. When it was our turn, Mr. Hayes stood. He wasn't flashy like their lawyer, but he had this quiet confidence that filled the room. He started slow, steady, laying out facts, not feelings. Then he asked Daniel to take the stand. Daniel walked up there, hands trembling slightly. He looked at the judge, then at the crowd, and finally at me. I smiled faintly, and he began. He told the story exactly as it happened. The fights, the nights waiting for calls that never came. The day she left the note, how Emmy cried herself to sleep asking where her mommy was. Every word sounded like it weighed a ton. When he pulled that note from his pocket, the same one we'd found under the stairs, the courtroom went silent. Mr. Hayes handed it to the judge. The judge read it carefully, then glanced toward Claire. Her face had gone pale. "Miss Rogers," he said sternly, "is this your handwriting?" Her lawyer leaned in, whispering something, but she hesitated too long. "Yes," she finally said, voice small. I almost pitied her for a second. Almost. Then Lucy stood and presented more. Bank statements showing transfers Claire had made to Australia just before disappearing. Emails to friends bragging about her new life. Reporters started scribbling fast. The truth was spreading faster than her lies ever had. Claire's lawyer tried to interrupt. "Your Honor, we'd like to present medical evidence showing Mrs. Rogers was under mental distress during the time she left." The judge nodded, allowing it. A woman from the back came forward, a supposed witness. She claimed Daniel had poisoned Claire's food once during a fight. That's when I couldn't hold my tongue. I stood up, voice sharp as a knife. "That's a lie." The whole room turned toward me. The judge banged the gavel. "Mrs. Vance, please remain seated." I sat down, tears burning my eyes. But inside, something stronger than fear began to rise. Something like righteous fury. Lucy whispered something to Mr. Hayes, then stood. "Your Honor, we have evidence contradicting that statement." She pulled out a medical report showing Claire had been treated in Sydney 3 years ago for food poisoning caused by spoiled seafood. Not an attack, just her own carelessness. Claire's so-called witness froze. The color drained from her face. Lucy continued, her tone calm but lethal. "And we also have proof that this witness received a financial transfer from Mrs. Rogers shortly before testifying." Gasps echoed across the room. Cameras clicked like gunfire. Claire's fake composure cracked. Her hands clenched into fists. Mr. Hayes presented one last piece of paper. A voluntary settlement Claire had signed years ago. She'd waived all rights to assets or support after accepting her share of property. The judge's eyes hardened. "Mrs. Rogers, is this your signature?" She opened her mouth, but no words came. Her lawyer looked defeated. The judge nodded slowly, folded the papers, and spoke in a tone that carried finality. "The claims of the defendant are hereby dismissed. Custody remains with Mr. Vance. Furthermore, The plaintiff may pursue damages for defamation and fraud. The gavel struck once. Boom. The sound echoed like thunder rolling through my bones. Claire just sat there, motionless. Cameras flashed around her, reporters shouting questions she didn't answer. She stood, shaking, covered her face with her hands, and rushed out through the side door. I sat there for a long moment, the air thick with disbelief. Then Daniel turned toward me. His eyes were full of tears. "It's over, Mom." I nodded, too choked up to speak. When we walked out of that courthouse, the sun had broken through the clouds. Reporters called after us, but I didn't care. All I saw was my son free of that shadow at last. Outside, the neighbors were waiting. Mary, Tom, even old Mr. Jenkins from down the street. They hugged us, clapped Daniel on the back, told me how brave we'd been. I smiled, but deep inside, I just felt tired. Not sad, not happy, just emptied out. Lucy came up to me, her voice soft. "Mrs. Vance, you did it." "No," I said. Looking at Daniel and thinking of little Emmy waiting at home. "We did it," she smiled, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself breathe. That night, we came home to the smell of sugar cookies baking. Emmy ran straight into Daniel's arms, laughing. "Daddy, my teacher said my story about our family made her cry." Daniel laughed, scooping her up. I leaned against the doorway, tears finally spilling free. The sun was setting over the yard, painting everything gold. Maybe we'd lost a lot. Maybe we'd been through hell. But standing there, watching my son and granddaughter laugh together, I realized something. Sometimes life breaks you down just so you can rebuild stronger. And no matter how dark things get, love always finds its way home. It's funny how silence can sound so different once the chaos fades. For years, no one had seen her since that day she stormed out of the courthouse in those ridiculous heels. Some said she went back to Australia. Others whispered she was hiding out somewhere downstate, trying to start fresh. Me? I didn't care. I'd stopped wondering. I was too busy living again. Every morning, Daniel would get up before sunrise, pack his lunch, and head to work at the new construction site. He came home tired, covered in dust. But I could see something in him I hadn't seen in years. Peace. And Emmy? She'd turned into our little sunshine again. Her laughter had a way of filling every corner of that old house, like the walls themselves were healing with her. Sometimes I'd catch her sitting on the porch swing, holding a picture of her parents from before everything fell apart. She'd whisper something to it, smile a little, then run off to chase the neighbor's cat. I never asked what she said. Kids have their own way of forgiving, I suppose. One evening, I was out watering the garden when Daniel came out carrying 2 mugs of coffee. He handed me one and sat beside me on the steps. The sun was setting, that orange glow stretching across the sky like fire melting into honey. "Mom," he said quietly, "you ever think about forgiving her?" I didn't answer right away. I watched a bird land on the fence, fluttering its wings like it had someplace better to be. "Forgiving?" I said, finally. "Honey, forgiveness ain't something you just decide one day. It's something that sneaks up on you after you're done being angry." He nodded, staring at the dirt road leading out of town. "I thought I hated her," he said, "for what she did to us. But lately, I've been thinking, maybe she was just lost. I looked at him then, really looked. He wasn't that broken boy under the bridge anymore. He was a man again, a father, my son. Maybe she was, I said softly, but that doesn't mean you need to go looking for her. He smiled faintly, and I could tell he understood. That night, after tucking Emmy into bed, I sat by the window with my old photo albums. I flipped through pictures of Daniel as a boy, his messy hair, missing teeth, that big grin he used to have before life wore him down. Then I found one of Claire. She was laughing, holding baby Emmy in her arms, sunlight spilling across her face. For a moment, my heart ached. No, I chuckled, pulling on my robe. Well, then we better not be late to breakfast. Downstairs, Daniel was flipping pancakes with that same crooked smile his daddy used to have. Emmy sat at the table, syrup already smeared on her cheeks. She looked up at me and said, "Grandma, can we go to the park later? I want to show you the duck I named Gerald." I laughed till tears came to my eyes. You got yourself a deal, sugar. After breakfast, we all walked to the park together, hand in hand. The sky was clear, the world simple again. Daniel pushed Emmy on the swings, and her laughter echoed across the open field. I sat on a bench, closing my eyes, feeling the sun warm my face. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. No more lawyers, no more letters, no more lies. Just us, me, my boy, and his little girl. As the wind rustled through the trees, I thought about how fragile life really is. One wrong turn, one broken promise, and everything can fall apart. But love, real love, it finds a way to stitch the broken pieces back together. That's the thing about storms. They tear everything down, but they also wash everything clean. And as I watched Daniel scoop Emmy up in his arms, both of them laughing like they had Sometimes, life doesn't scream at you. It whispers. It tugs at your heart, soft and stubborn, like a child pulling at your sleeve saying, "Don't go." When I look at Daniel and Emmy now, laughing, living, healing, I see proof that love is stronger than betrayal, and hope can rise even from the coldest nights under a bridge. If you're listening to my story tonight, I want you to remember this. No matter how broken your heart feels, no matter how heavy your days get, you are never too lost to be found again. Maybe life isn't about avoiding pain at all. Maybe it's about walking through it with grace and choosing over and over again to love anyway. So if you ever find yourself standing in the ruins of what used to be your life, don't turn away. Look closer.